Heavier bursts of rain push into parts of the Pennines, the Lake District, as well as Snowdonia, and the front slowly sips south. But we keep the mild air to the south, 8 or 9 Celsius through the night here. Colder for Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England, and again, blustery showers. And it's turning colder, so that snow line is coming down, and that means we could even see sleet, hail, snow down to lower levels for central and northern Scotland during Wednesday. Certainly snow building up over any modest hills, really 200 metres and above. The cloud and outbreaks of rain sink south, and it'll be a damp day in places in the far south, but nothing particularly heavy, and it stays mild, 13 Celsius there. But in the north, across Wales, northern England, as well as Scotland and Northern Ireland, brighter skies. Some sunshine, however, it will feel cold. And the wind picks up further in the far north on Wednesday night and into the start of Thursday. Gales or severe gales for the Northern Isles for a time. And Thursday looks like a blustery day for all of us, but brighter skies are pushing south for Friday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome once again to On the Money. It's your daily weekday dose of economics, business and consumer news. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be talking about whether the massive profits now being made by oil and gas companies as energy prices soar should be hit with a windfall tax, with the proceeds used to help households struggling with their fuel bills. Plus, we'll talk about the UK's recovering music industry on the night of those Brit Awards. All that and more on The Money, after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Health Secretary says an additional £5.9 billion will be made available straight away to tackle the backlog of NHS waiting lists in England. Sajid Javid promised that £36 billion will be made available over the next 3 years as he unveiled his new elective recovery plan in the Commons. He said the number of people waiting for elective care in England now stands at 6 million. That's up from 4.4 million before the pandemic.
Sadly, as a result of focusing on urgent care, the NHS couldn't deal with non-urgent care as much as anyone would have liked. The British people, of course, have understood this. Despite these exceptional efforts, there is now a considerable COVID backlog of elective care. But I want these people to know that the NHS is open, and as Health Secretary, I want them to come forward for the care they need.
In the last half hour, Downing Street has confirmed that Boris Johnson is carrying out a small reshuffle of his ministerial team today. The Prime Minister's official spokesman said a small number of changes would be announced. Well, the move follows the appointment of Stephen Barclay, the Cabinet Office Minister, as Mr Johnson's new Chief of Staff. Number 10 also confirmed the Prime Minister has confidence in Chief Whip Mark Spencer. Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle says it was inappropriate for Boris Johnson to claim that Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile, warning such comments only inflame opinions. It's after the Labour leader was targeted yesterday by a crowd of lockdown protesters, some shouting traitor and Savile at him, one repeatedly accusing him of protecting paedophiles. At least 6 Conservatives, including a former Cabinet Minister, have linked the harassment Sir Keir Starmer experienced to Boris Johnson's Savile claim. The Prime Minister tweeted describing the behaviour towards Keir Starmer as absolutely disgraceful. However, Sir Lindsay reminded the House that words have consequences.
It's been reported that some abuse was directed at the Right Honourable Member, the Leader of the Opposition, yesterday, related to claims made by the Prime Minister in this chamber. But regardless of yesterday's incident, I made it clear last week that while the Prime Minister's words were not disorderly, they were inappropriate. As I said then, these sorts of comments only inflame opinions and generate disregard for the House, and it is not acceptable.
The energy regulator Ofgem says UK households could face a further increase in energy prices, especially if there's a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Speaking to a cross-party group of lawmakers, the chief executive, Jonathan Brearley, said an invasion would drive high gas prices and ultimately feed through to customers when the price cap gets reviewed in October. Ofgem announced last week the cap would rise by 54% from the 1st of April, affecting around 22 million households. Professor Sir Chris Whitty has written to unvaccinated NHS staff, telling them it's their professional responsibility to get the jabs. The Chief Medical Officer for England tweeted the letter, which was also signed by the Chief Nursing Officer and the Chief Midwifery Officer. Sir Chris says getting the vaccine will protect both themselves and their patients. Last month, the Health Secretary Sajid Javid told the Commons the legal requirement for frontline NHS staff to be vaccinated against COVID is now under consultation. Pornography sites will soon be legally required to verify the age of their users under new rules. The Online Safety Bill is going to require companies to put robust checks in place to stop children accessing harmful content. If websites don't comply, ministers say that Ofcom will be able to fine sites up to 10% of their annual global turnover or block their site in the UK. Television presenter Bamber Gascoigne has died at the age of 87. The original host of University Challenge passed away at home after a short illness, according to a statement on behalf of his family. Mr Gascoigne was the face of the BBC quiz show for 25 years and coined its catchphrases like "Your starter for 10" and "Fingers on buzzers." This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's return to On the Money and Liam.
And this is On the Money. Coming up today, the big oil and gas companies are raking in billions of pounds in profit, benefiting from sky-high global energy prices, should they be hit with a windfall tax. With the proceeds used to help households struggling with their fuel bills. As ever, On the Money, grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff. Plus, regional political and business leaders are meeting in Liverpool, pushing the levelling up agenda. We're live on Merseyside. And as the prestigious Brit Awards take place later this evening at London's O2 Arena, we're joined by a Brit Awards director on the artist to watch, while asking if the UK's world-class live music industry has finally bounced back from this pandemic. As ever, here on The Money, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's show? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. We'll read out some of your messages later in the show, so stay with us. This is GB News on television and on DAB plus digital radio. I'm Liam Halligan. You're on The Money. Now, BP has reported annual profits of $12.8 billion in 2021, the highest in 8 years, reflecting soaring oil and natural gas prices. Another energy giant, Shell, chalked up $19 billion in global profits, a fourfold rise, again, due to sky-high prices for oil and gas. These global energy prices are up due to geopolitical tensions, but mainly because of the more general surge in demand as the global economy emerges from lockdown, combined with sluggish supply. Now, here at On the Money, we like profits. When a British company like BP does well, or an Anglo-Dutch outfit like Shell, UK taxpayers benefit, plus those with pensions invested in so-called blue-chip companies. As share values and dividends payments rise, they also benefit. But, and here's the point. These spiralling wholesale energy prices have driven up household utility bills. The Ofgem energy price cap was raised 54% last week. That's eye-watering, with average annual bills set to soar to almost £2,000 from April onwards. And that's why many now want a windfall tax on these huge oil and gas companies operating in the UK. Energy company bosses have seen their bonuses soar by millions. Meanwhile, vulnerable families are choosing between heating and eating, while many more are worried sick about how to make ends meet. For a while now, the net zero green agenda means some ministers have been reluctant to allow more oil and gas exploration in the North Sea. But 6 new North Sea projects are now set to get the go-ahead, with others in government arguing high fuel bills and the cost of living crisis trumps net zero concerns. Would a windfall tax on energy giants like Shell and BP stymie investments needed to develop those new North Sea fields, making our energy crisis even worse? Windfall taxes also amount to what's called retrospective legislation, which means they could be challenged in the courts. Many are outraged also that household bills are made even higher by subsidies to energy companies investing in wind and solar power. Around a fifth of what we pay is used to fund government payments to encourage the oil and gas industry to shift towards renewables. Now, the politics of energy giants making billions while millions of households suffer, they seem clear. Just tax them more. It's simple, right? But the realities are more complex, with some saying a windfall tax will make our energy crisis even worse. So let's discuss this. Today's On the Money question, and here it is. Would an energy industry windfall tax help cut household fuel bills? Grown-up conversations here on this show with people who know their stuff. And here's Michael Jacobs, Professor of Political Economy at Sheffield University, formerly an advisor to Prime Minister Gordon Brown. Michael, great to have you on the show as ever. He's joined by Howard Cox, the CEO of Fair Fuel UK, and Richard Hunter, Head of Markets at Interactive Investor. Welcome to all of you. Michael Jacobs, let's talk to you first. You're very well versed in government, in particularly the policy making within the Labour Party. Labour is now calling for a windfall tax on these big energy companies. That's one reason why we're discussing it. Do you think this could actually become government policy too?
Well, I think it depends what you mean by can. I think in terms of, is it a feasible option? Yes, it is. And it's been done before. Is it something which this government is likely to do? Well, I think that depends quite a lot on public opinion and public pressure. The Chancellor so far has resisted it, saying that he doesn't want to make businesses less profitable, to deter investment and so on. But there is an increasing clamour. It isn't just the Labour Party now. The Liberal Democrats are also in favour of this. A number of other organisations have called for it. So I think whether or not the government does it, I think, is a matter of politics and whether the Chancellor and the Prime Minister feel under sufficient pressure. And obviously, we haven't yet seen the energy price rises impact on bills, but that'll happen very shortly in April. That will be another moment, I think, of political pressure. But in terms of feasibility, yes, it's very feasible. It can certainly be done. And of course, the Labour government in the late 90s did introduce a windfall tax on privatised utility bills, which was previously in the manifesto and was implemented. Howard Cox, you're the CEO of the Fair Fuel UK campaign. It will be very much on your mind that household energy bills, as Michael Jacobs just said, are set to go up very significantly in April. What's your thoughts on this windfall tax, which is being mooted
from various different corners now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually, and I should declare my position. I'm actually the founder of Fairfield UK, primarily regarding drivers, the 37 million drivers in this country. Now, profits are vital for sustainability, for long-term sustainability for businesses. But what is worrying our supporters, and we have 1.7 million supporters, is that using global energy crisis, that's what we've got now, to exploit customers who need their heating and to fill their car, I think is fiscally criminal. And so I'm moving away now to actually to a windfall tax could be a good thing. I mean, let me give you an example. Since December 2019, right up to the end of the 2021, when in the last quarter of last year, I understand that BP made $4 billion, most of their profits. The price of diesel, or should I say the profit per litre for diesel, went up 150% and petrol went up 103%. That's the wholesale price, a difference between the retail price. Now, what I don't understand, why was that necessary? Why did they have to increase the profit? Why didn't they keep the profitability levels the same? And that's why we're calling, and I'm working very closely with people like Robert Halfon and Craig McKinley MP. We've written to the fuel supply chain, including the oil company bosses, to actually to justify those profit increases. And we need to introduce a body like Pump Watch. We've got Ofgem, we've got Ofcom, we've got Ofwat. Why haven't we got something like Ofpump, and we're calling it Pump Watch?
Interesting, Howard. And of course, in the mind of the public, high household utility bills and high bills when they fill up with petrol and diesel, their cars and vans on the forecourt, are very much of a piece, aren't they? Richard Hunter, let's go to you. You're head of markets at Interactive Investor. Let's just talk a little bit, just straight up and down, about these big profits from BP that have been announced today off the back of Shell's profits. They are pretty chunky, and as I say, we celebrate profits here on The Money. They are pretty chunky, aren't they, by recent standards?
Well, indeed they are, and they're very complicated figures as ever to untangle, but there's no doubt that the oil majors in this country have made substantial profits this year. In terms of context, of course, if you go back 12 months, both BP and Shell were reporting losses of over $20 billion. So over a 2-year period, the gains aren't quite so substantial. But it's a perfectly understandable call that we're hearing at the moment. Obviously, BP and Shell have got they've got no power over either the movement of the oil price or indeed the timing of their results, because clearly the timing of their results has come against this public clamour. But the other thing you're going to be hearing from the oil majors, and BP in particular, which is probably a bit more aggressive on this than Shell, is the tens of billions of dollars that are going to be required over the next few years to focus on renewable energies. Because, of course, one of the things that we were talking about this time last year wasn't so much the profits that the oil majors were making, rather we had a problem with oil itself. And, of course, as I say, BP is probably more aggressive, moving towards becoming what it calls an integrated energy company, which would include much lower carbon emissions. But obviously, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight.
Michael, let's go back to you, Professor Michael Jacobs. You're very well versed in government policy making. You've worked at a high level. You do think deeply and write extensively about economics. What do you make of this argument that a lot of the oil majors are putting forward now, that if you hit them with a retrospective windfall tax, there could be legal challenges, but almost certainly, in their view, there would be less investment just at a time when the government is green-lighting more investment in the North Sea that could help ease the energy crisis?
Well, lots of different possible answers to that. So the first thing to say is that a windfall tax wouldn't be 100%. So it's not as if anybody is proposing that the entire extra amount of profits that they're making, because energy prices are so high, and this is, as we know, nothing to do with them. They are benefiting from it. It's literally a windfall. They have they've done nothing to earn these extra profits, so nobody's suggesting it should be 100%. The proposal from Labour is that it should be an extra 10%, which would take their total corporation tax effectively on oil and gas to 50%, which is not a huge amount. So there would still be money left for investment and for distribution to shareholders. Unfortunately, it's not the case that the big oil companies, including BP and Shell, are investing a lot in green energy. They're investing a little in green energy. And if you want more investment in green energy, you wouldn't keep the money in those companies. You'd give it to the businesses that are really investing in a big way in oil and in wind and offshore wind particularly, and solar and so on. So this is not the best place for investment in green energy. And to be perfectly honest, investment in the North Sea is not now what the climate crisis demands. It demands investment in non-carbon sources of fuel. So I think the investment arguments are pretty weak. And so are the distribution to shareholders options. BP and Shell are massive distributors of their profits to shareholders. They've been not only giving more in dividends, but also buying back their shares, which gives more money to shareholders. And in the end, this is really about who gets the benefit and who is hit by the cost of an energy price rise, which is nothing to do with these companies, nothing to do with consumers, whether business or household consumers, but is a result of global geopolitics and, as you said, the recent rapid recovery in demand. And in the end, governments have to make a choice, which is who gets the benefit from that and who suffers the cost. And at the moment, all the benefit is going to those companies and to their shareholders, and all of the costs are going on particularly low-income households and small businesses and others who are really going to struggle to pay the bill. And a windfall tax, as long as the money is, of course, then spent on helping those consumers, is a way of saying, well, let's redistribute the benefits and the costs. Let's get a bit less benefit, not no benefit, let's get a bit less benefit for the oil and gas companies and a bit more benefit and a bit less cost for the consumers and small businesses.
Stay with us, Professor Michael Jacobs. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan, because after the break, we'll keep this discussion going with my expert panel. Should the UK oil and gas industry giants be levied with a windfall tax to help suffering households, given sky-high domestic fuel bills? Plus, we'll be hearing from our Northwest reporter, Bradley Harris, as business and political leaders meet to discuss the next steps to level up the north of England. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
Hello again. A three-way split across the country today. Cloudy and mild in the south, showery but colder in the north, and in between across central parts, a large amount of cloud and some outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Because of this weather front, that's where the rain will be focused through the rest of the day, northern England into parts of Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and North Wales. But it's really staying where it is, and it divides the country between mostly cloudy but some brighter spells in the south, and brighter but also colder with some blustery showers for Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and those showers falling as snow above 300 or 400 metres. So feeling cold in the wind in the north, but mild where we get some brightness coming through in the south, even as high as 14 Celsius for the likes of London. And then into the evening, the cloudy damp zone in the middle becomes wetter for a time as some heavier bursts of rain push into parts of the Pennines, the Lake District, as well as Snowdonia, and the front slowly sips south. But we keep the mild air to the south, 8 or 9 Celsius through the night here. Colder for Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England, and again, blustery showers. And it's turning colder, so that snow line is coming down, and that means we could even see sleet, hail, snow down to lower levels for central and northern Scotland during Wednesday. Certainly snow building up over any modest hills, really 200 metres and above. The cloud and outbreaks of rain sink south, and it'll be a damp day in places in the far south, but nothing particularly heavy, and it stays mild, 13 Celsius there. But in the north, across Wales, northern England, as well as Scotland and Northern Ireland, brighter skies, some sunshine, however, it will feel cold. And the wind picks up further in the far north on Wednesday night and into the start of Thursday. Gales or severe gales for the Northern Isles for a time. And Thursday looks like a blustery day for all of us, but brighter skies are pushing south for Friday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. It's 1:22. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan, here on GB News Television and DAB+ digital radio. We're discussing the merits and benefits of an energy windfall tax as profits at BP and Shell soared to $12 billion and $19 billion respectively, in part due to rising wholesale energy prices, as those same rising prices mean millions of households are struggling to pay their fuel bills. And that's before a new, much higher energy price cap kicks in April, of course. I'm still with my expert panel. We just heard from Michael Jacobs, Professor of Political Economy at Sheffield University. Let's now go back to Howard Cox, founder of the Fair Fuel UK campaign. Howard, you've talked a lot about fuel prices when people fill up their vans and cars. How about fuel prices in terms of domestic household energy bills for gas, heating, cooking, and so on? To what extent do you think these high prices are now hitting home politically?
Well, politically, they're hitting home very, very hard. I mean, it's very worrying. And your previous speaker, he made the point about the fact is that these companies, BP and Shell and lots of other major oil corporations, are looking after their shareholders and the dividends they pay, etc. I mean, I think it has a foul stench of greed when you see the boss of Shell, for example, shares rise very quickly in the last, I think, quarter by £7 million, when bulk of my supporters and are struggling to choose whether to eat, heat or fuel their vehicles. There has to be some sort of balance. And I must repeat, and I'm a One Nation Tory by heart, and I believe that we should be making decent profits. Everyone, right down to the plumber servicing the person who can't heat their house. We need to look after people at the moment in time. This energy crisis isn't going to go away, especially with the geopolitical problems in the Ukraine as well. All these sort of things are happening. And unfortunately, what's happening at the moment, our government hasn't got a clue how to handle this. And I am tending towards a windfall profit approach.
Very, very interesting. Let's turn now to Richard Hunter, Head of Markets at Interactive Investor. Richard, you are an equity analyst. It's your job to really understand the accounts of the companies that you invest in on behalf of your clients and you analyse. To what extent do you think the high share prices on the likes of Shell and BP, which Howard Cox just referred to, are a function of the fact that at the moment there doesn't seem to be a windfall tax on the horizon? And if a windfall tax did come in, do you think there would be court cases? Do you think the companies would cry foul and say this is so-called retrospective legislation, which is unfair?
Well, it's possible. Shell recently had to face some potential litigation in the Netherlands about its drive towards its renewable targets and bringing the date forward that it had previously suggested. At the same time, of course, yes, of course, there is clearly a problem here. Interesting, some of the comments that we've been hearing amid, for example, the $20 billion losses of this time last year. And I should hasten to add, I've got no axe to grind one way or the other with the oil companies here, but Shell slashed its dividend for the first time since the Second World War, and BP also did something similar. So it's a question of horses for courses. The oil industry is notoriously volatile. The futures price on oil went into negative territory last year, which resulted in that particular set of losses for the oil industry. And of course, the other thing is, whilst the question of a windfall tax is no doubt moot, the very fact that the likes of BP and Shell have been posting these bumper profits this year, of course, means a higher tax take for the government in terms of corporation tax. That then leads on to the question whether there should be a bit more. But by the same token, as I say, from an equity point of view, and taking that longer term view, a lot of the things that the companies such as BP and Shell are now being almost forced into investing in, the renewable energies, many of those are actually quite untested, and so they do need to also bear in mind the fact that, of course, some of these investments inevitably will pay off and some won't.
Michael, let's go back to you. You make a compelling case for a windfall tax, and clearly the politics of this, they're primary colours, aren't they? It appeals instinctively to tax heavily or more heavily oil companies that are making very high profits this year and who are forecast to make very high profits next year too. But what do you make of the argument that it's just wrong, it's unconstitutional to allow people to make a profit and then to tax them retrospectively, to change the rules after the financial year is over? Some people would say that's against the law. Some people would say that's the kind of thing that dictators do rather than the government of a liberal capitalist democracy like the UK.
Some people might say that, like you have just said it. I've not heard a lot of people making that argument, largely because it was tested in the courts. As you said at the beginning, the Labour government under Tony Blair introduced the windfall tax on the utilities, energy, water in particular, and that was tested in the courts and it was found to be legal. And of course, you're not taxing anything that was expected. So the whole point of it being a windfall tax is that it's an unexpected profit, and therefore none of the shareholders or the company bosses, who are also major shareholders in these companies, none of them were expecting this. So you're not confiscating something they thought they had a right to in the past. You're taking something that they did not expect to happen. And of course, I don't really get the argument about the fact that they've made losses in the past. When they make losses, they don't pay tax. Taxes are paid on profits. So if you don't make a profit, you're not taxed. So in those years that they made losses, they were not taxed. So this is simply saying you've made a lot of money in the last year in particular, and you will make some more money in the next year. Unexpectedly, you weren't expecting it, so let's make a slightly fairer distribution of it than would otherwise happen. And our tax rates in the North Sea, they're higher than for other companies. So North Sea and other oil and gas companies based in the UK pay a 40% tax rate, which is considerably higher than most companies pay. But putting it up by 10%, as the Labour Party suggested, or 20%, would still leave them with a lot of additional money this year for investment, for paying for shareholders. The other thing to remember about North Sea taxation is that you can take tax off in a tax relief for decommissioning, for investment and other things. And over the last 6 years, from 2015 onwards, both Shell and BP made huge use of these tax reliefs, and in many years they paid no tax at all. So the tax regime in the UK is pretty generous to oil and gas companies. We take about $2 per barrel of oil produced in the North Sea. Norway, for example, takes $21. So 10 times as much tax taken from a Norwegian oil and gas company operating in the same part of the world in the North Sea that we do. That is why this is painted in primary colours, because it does look like a pretty obvious thing to do, which is fair both to the people who are suffering the most and, to be perfectly honest, to those companies, because they weren't expecting this money.
Professor Michael Jacobs, great to talk to you as ever. This debate will go on. Michael Jacobs there, Professor of political economy at Sheffield University, former advisor to Labour chancellors and prime ministers. Thank you also Howard Cox of the Fair Fuel UK campaign, and also Richard Hunter joining us from Interactive Investors. Now, Shell's chief executive Ben van Beurden has said in response to calls for a windfall tax, "I'm not convinced that windfall taxes, popular as they seem, will help us with supply, nor is it going to help us with demand." And the chief executive of BP, Bernard Looney, says the UK needs more gas, not less gas right now, and that's going to require more investment, not less investment, and a windfall tax probably isn't going to incentivise more investment. Thank you so much to all my guests. As ever, here on The Money, grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff. Stay with us, there's more after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1:32. I'm Rosie Wright to keep you up to date here on GB News. Jacob Rees-Mogg has been moved from Commons leader to Minister for Brexit Opportunities and Government Efficiency in the Cabinet Office. Mark Spencer has been made leader of the House of Commons. It's all part of a small ministerial reshuffle happening today. Well, the move follows the appointment of Stephen Barclay as the Cabinet Office Minister as Mr Johnson's new Chief of Staff. The Health Secretary's pledged an additional £5.9 billion to immediately tackle the backlog of NHS waiting lists in England. Unveiling his new elective recovery plan, Mr Javid promised to cut waiting lists to under a year by 2025. The number of people waiting to start routine hospital treatment in England now stands at 6 million. That's up from 4.4 million people before the pandemic. The Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, says it was inappropriate for Boris Johnson to claim that Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile, warning such comments only inflame opinions. The Prime Minister's facing renewed calls to apologise from within his own party. It's after the Labour leader was targeted by a crowd of protesters yesterday. They were shouting traitor and Savile at him. Professor Sir Chris Whitty has written to unvaccinated NHS staff telling them it's their professional responsibility to get vaccinated. Sir Chris says getting the vaccine will protect both themselves and their patients. Last month, the Health Secretary Sajid Javid told the Commons the legal requirement for all frontline NHS staff to get jabbed against COVID is now under consultation. The television presenter Bamber Gascoigne has died at the age of 87. The original host of University Challenge passed away at home after a short illness, according to a statement on behalf of his family. Mr Gascoigne was the face of the BBC quiz show for 25 years and coined its catchphrases like "You started for 10" and "Fingers on buzzers." You're up to date now here on GB News. Don't forget, we're on your TV, online and on DAB+ radio. A short pause and then we'll be back to On the Money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 1:36. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. Now, today in Liverpool, there's an event taking place called the Convention of the North. Business and political leaders across the north of England are meeting up to talk about the next steps in the so-called levelling up agenda, tackling big inter-regional inequalities across the UK. Our Northwest reporter Bradley Harris is live from the Spine building where the convention's happening. Brad, you and I were broadcasting together from Macclesfield, Burnley, Blackpool during last week's GB News North West Week. What are local business and political leaders gathered in Liverpool telling you today?
Yeah, well, Liam, as you say, we've spent the last week in the Northwest talking about levelling up, and it is a big issue for the North. But right here in the Spine building, as you say, currently the UK's healthiest building, business leaders, political leaders are all meeting here in this building, just upstairs, in fact, to talk about how levelling up is going to work in the North and how quickly as well. We heard from the white paper just a few days ago that gave a bit more of a clear indication as to how it would work in the North. 12 measures that are set to be completed by 2030. I was speaking to Sir Roger Marsh, who is the chair of the Leeds City region. He told me what he expects the North to be like in 2030. Let's just hear his thoughts.
By 2030, I hope we will be well on the journey to becoming a net contributing economy. In other words, we add to national wealth rather than depend on it generated elsewhere. And that's important for two reasons. There's a pride point, actually, we make a contribution, but importantly for those other areas that have the same poverty and deprivation challenges we have in the North, to keep more of what they earn to fix those problems for society, because that's a healthy, vibrant economy. And if we're to play a full part in global Britain, then this economy, and let's remember, if the North was a country on its own, it would be in the top 25 economies of the world. So if it's not punching its weight, then the UK is not punching its weight, and it's all about that.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Connecting the UK, not just in London, but connecting London with the North and having that two-way system. One big theme here today at the Convention of the North is about collaboration. The Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, says that we need to work with the government, and we have been working with the government. Steve Rotherham, the Metro Mayor of the Liverpool City region, says that we kicked off the Industrial Revolution with our mills and our ports. We can do the same again and lead the way with green energy. So lots of big discussions happening here, Liam. We've got Michael Gove, the Secretary of State for Levelling Up and Communities, talking in just over a couple of hours' time. It'll be interesting to hear his thoughts later on today.
Bradley Harris, our GB News Northwest correspondent. Good to see you, Brad. And right there, as Brad has encapsulated, is the big dilemma, or one of the big dilemmas facing government. Lots of local leaders wanting to invest in green energy and so on. Lots of households concerned that that very move into green energy is pushing up their household energy bills. Now, tonight is the night of the Brit Awards, and stars such as Adele, Ed Sheeran and Dave will be hitting the stage with an exclusively British lineup. That's what it's all about at the Brit Awards. Now, last year's Brits took place as part of the government's pilot scheme for the return of live events with a mixture of virtual and in-person performances. And as On the Money viewers will be well aware, the pandemic hit the music industry hard. But with COVID restrictions now almost entirely lifted, tonight's event will be almost entirely back to normal, and Adele will be performing at the Brits for the first time since 2016. Is the UK's world-class live and recorded music industry finally bouncing back? Joining me to discuss this, I'm delighted, is Gennaro Castaldo of the record label association BPI, which runs the Brit Awards, of course. And we also have a return to On the Money of the singer and songwriter Tom Spate, who's tuning in to the show from his tour bus. Tom, great to see you. Big fans here of your work. Gennaro, let's talk to you first. Just think back, this time last year, even this autumn, when you and I were talking about this, the impact of lockdown on our world-class, money-spinning, export-promoting British live and recorded music industry.
Yeah, I mean, the impact was massive, particularly on the live sector, as we've spoken before, because artists and all the people that work with them weren't able to get into the venues, the festivals, and enjoy doing what they do best, which is to entertain. And Tom, your guest, will know that to his cost as well. On the recorded music side, actually, because we as fans and consumers did turn to music in ever greater sort of numbers. I think recorded did okay, and obviously it's a global business now, so we were able to sort of promote our artists all around the world. So that was fantastic through streaming. But it was live where it was particularly hit. Having said that, we were able to put a Brits on last year. It was incredibly challenging. We did it as part of that pilot scheme, as you say. We were honoured, really. We were able to invite 3,000 key workers who came along as our special guests. And that made it a very, very special atmosphere, I think, for us, for them as guests, and particularly for the artists. So it was a memorable landmark occasion, but it's wonderful to be able to get to a slightly more normal situation this year where we've got more of an audience there, and we've got the most amazing lineup of artists who are going to be performing, and hopefully they're receiving awards. The most amount of nominees we've ever had, most diverse, breadth and depth of British music reflected in all its glory. So I would encourage all your viewers to watch tonight. If they're not going in person, 8 o'clock live on ITV and ITV Hub. It will be spectacular, it will be brilliant, and it will be memorable.
Indeed, if they're not watching GB News. Now, Tom Spate, we've just heard the British music industry is getting back on the move, and you are physically on the move. Your little head's bobbing up and down because you're on your tour bus, rolling along the road, on the road again.
I am.
What's it like to be back on tour, to be a performer, having been caught up in lockdown like all the rest of us? How good does it feel to be heading for the open road again and the live stage?
It's fantastic, actually. Yeah, it's the first night of the tour, and I'm currently on my way to Leeds, and we're finishing off in London, so on the end of the week. So yeah, it's just so nice, and hopefully everyone will stay safe, and we're looking forward to seeing the fans again, really.
Big fans of yours here on The Money. You've appeared in the studio before. Please come back again, because I see you as somebody who's really breaking through as a singer and songwriter, despite the lockdown. But of course, a lot of your contemporaries trying to break through as well. They really have been stymied, haven't they, by these COVID rules. Hopefully now they can do their best to make their way.
Yeah, I think it feels the right time to kind of bounce back.
And there we go. We've lost Tom because he is rolling along the motorway. Tom, let's go back to Gennaro Castaldo. Gennaro, it's showbiz. At least they know it's live, right?
No, I know. But speaking with Tom, luckily I've got a ticket to go and see him in London, the gig he was talking about. So I can't wait to see that. He's a brilliant performer. And the thing I love most about him is that he's built up his profile with his fans by himself, the most very loyal fans. They follow him everywhere via social media. He's got very active Instagram and Twitter accounts, TikTok and everything. And he's doing it all by himself. And in a world where there are more artists than ever before, all trying to sort of compete for our attention, Tom understands that it's about engaging directly, building that emotional contact. So I think, as we said before in a previous interview, he's been streamed over 200 million times in total, which for someone who doesn't necessarily have that sort of household name stature attached to him is remarkable, and it shows what can be done. In fact, if you allow me, one category we're particularly proud of at the Brits is the Rising Star Award. The very first recipient was Adele in 2008, and we've had some great names since then. In fact, as an award, it's a great predictor of artist success. It really sort of celebrates new artists, and it's actually music critics. It's not the BPI, it's music critics that vote for this. And we worked out that over the last 5 years, the 15 winners and nominees between them, so lots of young, exciting talent, the likes of sort of Griff and Rag and Bone Man and others, Celeste, they've actually achieved 13.5 billion streams all around the world in just the last 5 years in 2021, so just 1 year. So it shows what an amazing platform the Brits are for new talent, for breakthrough artists, but equally for connecting British music all around the world, because not only will it be screened live tonight on ITV, but with the support of MasterCard, I should say, but it's going to be screened live all around the world with our digital partner YouTube as well. So we'll have fans everywhere, in Africa, Asia, America, etc., Europe, watching the Brits. That's fantastic for British music. So 1% population we account for, but 10% of all the music consumed in the world.
And long may that continue. Gennaro Castaldo, great to have you on the show. Tom Spate, sorry about the communications gremlins. Break a leg tonight, have a good gig. I look forward to seeing you again here in the On The Money studio. Gennaro Castaldo there of BPI, organisers of tonight's Brit Awards, and singer-songwriter Tom Spate on tour. Now, it's not all doom and gloom when it comes to the UK economy. There have been some encouraging signs that we are moving back towards a pre-pandemic normal. The easing of COVID restrictions in January drove a bump upwards in retail sales of furniture and household appliances, according to new figures from the British Retail Consortium. Well, our national reporter Paul Hawkins is in Surrey. Paul, you're rapidly turning into an economics correspondent. It's good to see.
So these figures from the British Retail Consortium show that furniture and household appliances have been helping to boost retail sales in January. The latest figures show that sales are up 11.9% year on year in January compared to the previous year. Some of that, though, it has to be said, when we put it into pounds, a lot of that inflation driving some of those sales, but still very healthy. You take it with a pinch of salt. But last year, non-essential shops were shut. However, sales up 7.5% if we compare it to 2020 before the pandemic. So still looking reasonably healthy. Food sales, though, were down in January because a lot of people started to eat out again. People staying away from restaurants and pubs because of the Omicron variant in December, now returning to hospitality venues. But the cost of living still expected to put a squeeze on those retail sales in the coming month. And just incidentally, something to note from the Food Foundation think tank, they've done some research and some pretty stark statistics to tell you about. 1 in 5 households choosing between eating or heating now. 1 million UK adults in the past month spent at least a day without food because they couldn't afford it and chose instead to heat their homes. And 1 in 10 households experiencing some degree of food insecurity, so that's skipping meals, going hungry or not eating for a day. The cost of living then still squeezing household budgets and still affecting millions of people for many months to come.
Paul Hawkins there, GB News national correspondent. Time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. We've heard that sales of furniture and household appliances from Paul have helped drive retail sales upwards. And today I'm talking to Scott Woodhead. He's CEO and founder of YOLO, a thriving online retail village which sells a vast range of products. YOLO started on the kitchen table in North Yorkshire back in 2014. It now owns and operates multiple brands that sell across almost 50 countries. And YOLO has a multi-million-pound investment deal with garden furniture company Amazonas. And here he is, Scott Woodhead, my latest guest on Money Talks. Scott, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us how the company started. What were you doing before? Yep. And what gave you the mad idea of starting your own business?
I think I've always been interested in business, so it was just something I've always wanted to do. I used to work for a big company that sold GPS, and I remember the first time I went, I was really inspired by their offices and just the thought that like one person has created this business out of nothing. And so, despite being told they couldn't. Exactly. That's often happens when you start a business, right? Other people say you can't do that. Yeah. If it would work, it had already been done. Yeah, exactly. So what's different about you that made you think, actually, I can do this? Well, I mean, for me, the big motivation for starting it was to create a company where people enjoyed coming to work. Because a lot of businesses these days, it's like going to school, isn't it? It's like you have to be there at a certain time, you have to wear a uniform, you take your lunch at a certain time. So we really wanted to create something where we get the best out of people, and by getting the best out of people, that then translates into us doing great things with our brands and what we do. So tell us about the business before the pandemic and how the pandemic impacted you. Yeah, so I mean, before the pandemic, we were growing quite nicely.
So it's like 5 or 6 years from 2014 to 2020.
Yeah. And then when the pandemic hit, it actually accelerated the business. We saw a massive increase in sales. So with everybody going home and kind of working from home and being in the gardens a lot more during that first lockdown, our hammock business took off. So we sold loads of hammocks through that. And then the other businesses that we have in there, kind of more consumer brands, were really successful. So it all kind of played nicely out for us, to be honest. And then I guess as we went into that second one, we still had some of that momentum.
So you specialise in retailing garden furniture, right, and other items for the garden. To what extent has your retail offer expanded beyond that original vision?
Yeah, so garden is one of the areas we do. We've got a tea business. We've just acquired a business called Cosmetics Lab, which is it manufactures beauty products.
Right.
We've got a packing machinery business. We've just acquired a stake in one of our suppliers, Amazonas. That was the multi-million-pound deal you referred to.
Yeah.
So we've kind of got lots of different things in lots of different markets. Gives us a nice spread and de-risks it a little bit, because if one market goes down, we've got other ones to rely on.
Here's a question. You're obviously a very successful young guy. You're employing lots of people. You're doing great things, and I tip my hat to you.
Thank you.
But to what extent would you say we should at least discuss whether or not big online retailers, and you're now a medium-sized retailer, pushing to become a big online retailer. To what extent do you think, Scott, that some of them are just a little bit too powerful now?
Yeah.
And they're crushing physical retailers?
Yeah, I think the bigger guys will probably end up having more of a hybrid system where they put more into the high street, because I think there's always a place for the high street. I assume that's what you refer to.
Yeah, so you see the big online retailers with high street outlets.
Yeah. I mean,
so where's the room for families, local people to build their own shops and stores if the retail giants are massive, not just online, but in high streets too?
I guess there's opportunities out there everywhere. You just have to look. And if you're offering a good service in a market where there's enough demand for it, and you do it in the right way with a motivated team, then I think you've got a good chance of succeeding. Not a guaranteed chance, but a good chance. I think some of the big retailers, the reason they've got big is because what they're offering is what people want, right?
And what would you say to Scott Woodhead back in 2014 that you now know that you didn't then, that you wish you did?
It takes longer. Everything takes longer. I think that would be because when I first started, I had aspirations that we were going to be here, within 6 months, and everything just takes a bit longer. So I think patience would be one. Just be patient.
Yeah.
One step in front of the other. Be consistent with what you're doing, and if you're doing the right things, you might have some success in that.
And what's a typical day for somebody like you who started and runs their own successful business? Is there a typical day?
Not really, no. I mean, you do everything, really. So you have your finance hat on, you have a marketing hat on. We're not quite at that stage where I can step back and lots of other people run it. I'm still heavily involved in it. And I like that, I like spinning the plates. But yeah, there's not a typical day, to be honest. If I told you what I've been doing this week, you'd probably think, why are you doing all of that?
Well, fixing the photocopier and the coffee machine and hanging the curtains in the office and
things like
while
that.
Thinking about strategy and raising money. I mean, just finally, Scott, what's your one piece of advice to people watching On The Money today? Many people who watch us either run their own businesses or think they might want to run their own business. What's the one thing from Scott Woodhead that you would say to people aspiring to be entrepreneurs?
Good question. I think get started. You've got to start. A lot of people will be possibly thinking about starting a business and they've been thinking about it way too long. And, hard work beats talent. I think if you just put that first step in, whatever that is, make that call, do some research, get something moving. I think that's it. When you start something, it creates momentum.
As they say, ready, fire, aim.
Exactly, yeah. Great
Scott
book.
Woodhead of YOLO. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
On The Money, as our latest Money Talks guest. Stay in touch with us. We'll be really pleased to hear how your business goes in the months and years to come.
Thank you for having us.
All the best. Scott Woodhead there of YOLO, my latest Money Talks guest. Before we finish the show, just a few short emails on the energy industry windfall tax. Lots of emails, but it's a packed show. Just got time for these. Barry says, no, there should not be a windfall tax. Those energy companies should be made to drop their prices and not charge so much. The government should get the benefit in their pockets. Mark says, if we do proceed with a windfall tax of £1 billion, how much would this reduce our bills? And Paul emailed us, I don't understand why you tax and give subsidies. Why not give tax breaks to Shell and BP for renewable investment and cut the climate renewable delta on household bills. Thanks for all those emails. Thanks for joining me here on The Money. Back tomorrow, same time, same place. This is GB News on television and DAB+ digital radio. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On The Money.
Hello again. A three-way split across the country today. Cloudy and mild in the south, showery but colder in the north, and in between across central parts, a large amount of cloud and some outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Because of this weather front, that's where the rain will be focused through the rest of the day, northern England into parts of Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and North Wales. But it's really staying where it is, and it divides the country between mostly cloudy but some brighter spells in the south, and brighter but also colder with some blustery showers for Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, and those showers falling as snow above 300 or 400 metres. So feeling cold in the wind in the north, but mild where we get some brightness coming through in the south, even as high as 14 Celsius for the likes of London. And then into the evening, the cloudy damp zone in the middle becomes wetter for a time as some heavier bursts of rain push into parts of the Pennines, the Lake District, as well as Snowdonia, and the front slowly sips south. But we keep the mild air to the south, 8 or 9 Celsius through the night here. Colder for Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England, and again, blustery showers. And it's turning colder, so that snow line is coming down, and that means we could even see sleet, hail, snow down to lower levels for central and northern Scotland during Wednesday. Certainly snow building up over any modest hills, really 200 metres and above. The cloud and outbreaks of rain sink south, and it'll be a damp day in places in the far south, but nothing particularly heavy, and it stays mild, 13 Celsius there. But in the north, across Wales, northern England, as well as Scotland and Northern Ireland, brighter skies, some sunshine, however it will feel cold. And the wind picks up further in the far north on Wednesday night and into the start of Thursday. Gales or severe gales for the Northern Isles for a time. And Thursday looks like a blustery day for all of us, but brighter skies are pushing south for Friday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About on GB News with me, Alex Phillips, where we get stuck into the issues that we really should be looking at in depth. Nothing is off the table and nobody will be cancelled for saying what they think. Keeping me company today is Ben Loughnane from the Bow Group, a think tank promoting conservative opinions with Tory MPs and peers among its members. And here's what we've got coming up on the show. It's a small word, but some find it incredibly difficult to say. Should you say it at all if you don't really mean it? Well, that's the predicament facing Boris Johnson as calls for him to apologise to Sir Keir Starmer continue to mount. Plus, porn sites will soon have to prevent children accessing X-rated content. How will it work? Will it work? Is it enough? I'll be speaking to a porn star on the new measures. And a call for football bodies to tackle violence against women following a series of rape allegations against players. Will a growing campaign for the game to take action be taken seriously? That's what we're talking about for the next hour, but what do you need to talk about? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me @gbnews. First, it's time for the GB News headlines with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's just 1 minute past 2. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Boris Johnson has announced a small ministerial reshuffle today. Jacob Rees-Mogg has been moved from Commons leader to Minister for Brexit Opportunities and Government Efficiency in the Cabinet Office. Mark Spencer has been made leader of the House of Commons. Stuart Andrew is the new Housing Minister. Chris Heaton-Harris is the new Chief Whip. The move follows the appointment of Stephen Barclay, the Cabinet Office Minister, as Mr Johnson's new Chief of Staff. The Health Secretary's pledged an additional £5.9 billion to immediately tackle the backlog of NHS waiting lists in England. Unveiling his new elective recovery plan, Mr Javid promised to cut waiting lists to under a year by 2025. The number of people waiting to start routine hospital treatment in England now stands at 6 million people. That's up from 4.4 million before the pandemic.
Sadly, as a result of focusing on urgent care, the NHS couldn't deal with non-urgent care as much as anyone would have liked. The British people, of course, have understood this. Despite these exceptional efforts, there is now a considerable COVID backlog of elective care. But I want these people to know that the NHS is open, and as Health Secretary, I want them to come forward for the care they need.
The Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has said it was inappropriate for Boris Johnson to claim that Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile, warning such comments only inflame opinion. It's after the Labour leader was targeted by a crowd of lockdown protesters yesterday, some shouting traitor and Savile at him, one repeatedly accusing him of protecting paedophiles. At least 6 Conservatives, including a former cabinet minister, have linked the harassment of the Labour leader to Boris Johnson's Savile claim. The Prime Minister tweeted describing the behaviour towards Sir Keir as absolutely disgraceful. However, Sir Lindsay reminded the House that words have consequences.
It's been reported that some abuse was directed to the Right Honourable Member, the Leader of the Opposition, yesterday, related to claims made by the Prime Minister in this chamber. But regardless of yesterday's incident, I made it clear last week that while the Prime Minister's words were not disorderly, they were inappropriate. As I said then, these sorts of comments only inflame opinions and generate disregard for the House, and it is not acceptable.
The energy regulator Ofgem says UK households could face further increase in energy prices, especially if there's a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Well, speaking to a cross-party group of lawmakers, Chief Executive Jonathan Brearley said an invasion would drive high gas prices and ultimately that would feed through to customers when the price cap gets reviewed in October. Ofgem announced last week that the cap would rise by 54% from April, affecting around 22 million households. Professor Sir Chris Whitty's written to unvaccinated NHS staff, telling them it's their professional responsibility to get the COVID jabs. The Chief Medical Officer for England tweeted the letter, which was also signed by the Chief Nursing Officer and Chief Midwifery Officer. Sir Chris says getting the vaccine will protect both themselves and their patients. Last month, the Health Secretary Sajid Javid told the Commons the legal requirement for frontline NHS staff to be vaccinated against COVID is now under consultation. Retired Pope Benedict XVI has asked for forgiveness for his handling of clergy sex abuse cases, but admitted to no personal or specific wrongdoing. An independent report that was commissioned by the German Church criticised his actions in 4 cases while he was the Archbishop of Munich between 1977 and 1982. The report also faulted his predecessor and successor and estimates that in the Munich Archdiocese between 1945 and 2019, there have been at least 497 abuse victims. Women with an aggressive form of womb cancer could get access to new immunotherapy treatment on the NHS. Most women with endometrial cancer die within a year of diagnosis. A new drug, Durampril, is being billed as the first development in this area of medicine since the introduction of chemotherapy. The television presenter Bamber Gascoigne has died at the age of 87. The original host of University Challenge passed away at home after a short illness, according to a statement on behalf of his family. Mr Gascoigne was the face of the BBC quiz show for 25 years and coined its catchphrases like, "You started for 10 and fingers on buzzers." You're now up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, let's head over to Alex for We Need to Talk About.
Remember those 4 tumultuous years after the referendum? When Remainers yelled abuse at Brexit politicians? When the legacy media even erected scaffolding on College Green for live TV to stoke up the febrile atmosphere as Steve Bray bayed through his megaphone and protesters intimidated MPs trying to get to interviews? When milkshakes were thrown on pensioners and Nigel Farage was threatened with battery acid by Joe Brand? I remember having my hair pulled out in fistfuls and being spat on while escorted to the salivating media circus by a police officer. What I don't remember is the legacy media voicing any outrage at the violence and insults, nor trying to de-escalate things by moving back into studios. Oh no, I remember them loving it, deliberately setting up cameras where protesters could shout over politicians and screen bomb shots. Yet today, after a bunch of weirdos yelled about microchips, 5G and the Magna Carta and mobbed Sir Keir Starmer and David Lammy, who, of course, once compared Brexiteers to Nazis, the same media is horrified and spouting headlines about the very mob culture they encouraged just a few years ago. Well, joining me in the studio today is research fellow at the Conservative think tank, the Bow Group, Benjamin Loughnane. Benjamin, did you agree that Boris Johnson should apologise for what he's in the Commons and that this has incited this sort of behaviour from these this ragtag group of protesters?
Yeah, well, one of the problems, of course, with the Savile thing is that Keir Starmer actually issued an apology some years ago for the handling of the Savile case. But obviously, there's a difference between a personal apology and an apology on behalf of an organisation. Now, that distinction, I think, is where Boris made the mistake. He sort of phrased it in a way which implied personal liability for Keir Starmer, which wasn't necessarily the case. However, I don't think it's necessary to issue an apology. I think that the calls for an apology are coming from people who that was what they wanted in the first place, and now they've got an excuse to demand it so that they can get Boris in a position where he's saying sorry, admitting that he's done things wrong, and they want that constantly at all times. They want Boris to always be on the back foot, always in negative press, always apologising for things, always in gaffes. Hence the constant focus on Partygate and all the rest of it, which of course was wrong. It was all bad, but you have to think about the motivations of the press. Why are they so desperate to discredit Boris? Why are they so desperate to get rid of him? And I think a lot of it is because of what he's doing at the moment, opening the country up, getting things back to normal. There are some people who are so ideologically attached to lockdown and all of this, what's been going on for the past couple of years. They just want Boris gone. And so that constant negative press is, I think, slightly ideologically driven and not just about principles.
Do you buy the argument that potentially inflammatory phrases in Parliament or name-calling or accusations inspires these protesters to do more than they might have been doing anyway? Or do you just think that's sort of a bit of a lazy connection and actually smacks of double standards? Because it seems to me the media are only decrying the situation now when they've been silent on such protests for years.
Yeah, I don't think these protesters need any inspiration. I think they'd be doing this anyway. As soon as they see a politician in public, as soon as they get the opportunity, it's sort of what they do. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And of course, you get times when it's heightened and times when it's lesser, but that is more to do with what's going on politically than what anyone has said. When there's times of great political activity, people go out and protest and they get angry and they swear and shout. And it's always been happening. John Prescott got egged and he punched someone in the face. Nigel Farage got a milkshake thrown over him, and then Joe Brand's comments, as you mentioned. This has been happening for years, but the press only seem to respond to it with sort of great outrage and how disgusted they are that it's happening when it is in their interest to do so.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. Believe me, I still miss that clump of hair missing from my scalp. So, Boris Johnson has so far defied calls for him to apologise over his Jimmy Savile remarks aimed at Keir Starmer. But if he did buckle and say the magic word, it wouldn't be the first time.
Mr. Speaker, I want to apologise. I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. To them and to this House, I offer my heartfelt apologies. And, Mr. Speaker, I apologise unreservedly for the offence that it has caused up and down the country, and I apologise